What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another very exciting episode right here on the MIgardener channel. In today's episode, I'm going to share with you some quirky and fun facts that you might not know about gardening. Let's go. So the first fun fact that you might not know is that onion seeds are not the same as seed onions, and seed potatoes are not the same as potato seed. This is because of the way that the word is actually structured. So if you're a chocolatier and you're making chocolate, and you're grinding down the cacao nibs and adding in the cacao butter, and you're adding in some milk fat and things like that, you are making chocolate. But if you just take that bar and you just basically pour it out without adding any seed chocolate, you won't have a properly tempered chocolate bar. And that's because the seed chocolate defines the crystalline structure that the rest of the chocolate needs to abide by. If you just pour it out, sometimes you'll have properly tempered chocolate. Other times it'll be very soft and it'll be very kind of jaggedy, the crystalline structure, because it's not aligned properly. And so the seed chocolate is a already tempered piece of chocolate that they drop in to train the other chocolate to follow the same crystalline structure. The same thing applies to making sugar as well as salt and lots of other things that have crystalline structure. Now, the same language applies to when you're planting seed potatoes as well as seed onions. Now, these are commonly seen as sets, and that's because the true seed of a potato is not the same as a potato set. Potatoes will make seeds, and if you plant those seeds, you will get a plant that might produce potatoes that are desirable. Same thing with onions. If you plant an onion, it will produce seed, which is onion seed. But it's not the same as seed onions. And that's because when you plant out a seed onion or a seed potato, you're essentially doing the same thing as a chocolatier or a sugar like a candy maker will do when they're making candy or chocolate, is you are essentially seeding the soil with an already formed potato. And that potato is going to create basically identical potatoes that are going to fall in line with the one that you planted. Same thing with onions. If you plant an onion, the onion will simply grow larger into a larger form. It's not like you're starting from a different seed entirely. And so because the way the word is structured, it can make a huge difference as to what you actually get. So here is potato seeds, and here is seed potatoes. See, huge difference. This is a onion seed, and this is seed onions. Huge difference. Here's another fun fact for you all. Did you know that there are over 5,000 different varieties of apples? That's right, over 5,000. That's because apples are known as open pollinated. Open pollinated just means that they will pollinate with any other apple tree in the area. And the fruit that comes off of that apple tree is a hybrid. That means it's going to be a cross of any of the apples out there. And so because of this, apple growers cannot consistently guarantee that when they plant a seed that it's going to breed true to type. And that's how so many varieties have come about, is over time, growers will basically throw seeds around, or they'll be driving down the road and they will notice a really pretty apple growing on the side of the road. And that apple is unique to all the other apples because of the fact that if it grew from a seed, it is essentially a hybrid of some other couple apples that have existed in the area, but it's not an exact replica. And that's because the exact genetic makeup can only be replicated through grafting. So for instance, any Granny Smith apple or any Golden Delicious that you've ever had has actually been grown from, get this, one tree. So what happens is that there's a farmer out there that discovered the Granny Smith apple. And what they did was they took a cutting from this beautiful tree that they loved. They took that cutting and they fused it onto what's called a rootstock. It's basically just a tiny little seedling, and they chop it off basically right at the trunk. And they take this branch and they basically cut a V in the trunk, and they cut basically a point in the stem that they took from this beautiful tree. They fuse the two together, they wrap it up with grafting tape, and over time, the trunk accepts the little branch and they become one, and they actually begin growing. That cutting is an exact genetic replica of that tree. And so as it grows, as it fruits, now you have two of the exact same genetic makeup. Then as that tree grows, you can take cuttings from that and fuse it to other rootstocks. So now 2 can become 4, or 4 can become 20. And so all of the Golden Delicious, all of the Granny Smith, all of the Fuji, all of those Gala apples that you've had, all of them come from quite literally one tree. That's pretty cool. Did you know that if you're growing a San Marzano tomato, you're technically breaking the law? As crazy as that sounds, it's true. San Marzano tomatoes can only be San Marzano tomatoes if they come from the San Marzano region of Italy. There's actually a group in Italy that assigns a DOP, and this means a destination origin of protection, and it's basically a distinction for exports to distinguish between fakes and the real deal. So this group essentially will say this tomato did in fact come from the San Marzano region of Italy, and so we can assign a DOP. It's highly regarded by chefs as the kind of the gold standard in tomatoes because of the volcanic region that they come from. But there's also, because there's such a high demand, there's a lot of fakes. And so if you're growing a San Marzano tomato, you're technically breaking the law. You're growing a San Marzano style tomato. Now, if you go to the grocery store and you buy tomatoes that are whole peeled plum tomatoes from California, you'll notice that if they're a reputable company, they will actually claim them as San Marzano style tomatoes because they cannot legally claim them as San Marzano tomatoes. That's pretty cool. Another fun fact that you probably didn't know is that basil only has one growth regulator. Now, a growth regulator is a chemical signal that the plant produces to stop it from growing. It's a signal that says, I'm done growing, it's time to do something else. And usually that something else is produce seed. So a growth regulator will typically be turned on to limit the growth so that it can focus more on flowering or producing fruit and flowers and seed. And so because basil only has one known growth regulator, if you can keep your basil from flowering, you can essentially keep it growing forever, in perpetuity. It's amazing. There are basil growers in Italy because this is a plant that has been grown in Mediterranean climates for hundreds of years. There are basil growers in Italy that have basil plants that are 5 to 7 years old. And that's because as they grow, they continue to prune them much like a topiary. They just prune off all the flowers. And as long as the plant is healthy, as long as the conditions allow, you can continue to grow it. And that's pretty awesome because if you can shut off that one main growth regulator, the plant never knows when to stop growing, which is pretty freaking cool. All right, one last fun fact that you might not already know is that cucumbers are in the same family as squash, the cucurbita family. Now, you might not have known that, but I'll do you one better. Did you know that cucumbers are actually a melon? That's right. Cucumbers, because of the way they ripen, actually make them more like a fruit than a vegetable. You see, we eat them as vegetables because we eat them young when they're green and they're not very bitter. However, once the skin turns bitter, the inside actually fully matures and becomes more like a melon. Cantaloupe, honeydew, honey rock, watermelon, they all ripen very much the same way in that when they're very young, you can actually eat the entire thing, much like a cucumber. But when they ripen, the skin turns bitter and the inside actually develops a whole new flavor. So much so that most of the world actually treats the cucumber like a fruit. So if you go to places like India, you'll commonly see cucumber juice as a drink. And that's because they let the entire cucumber ripen, and they will actually scoop out the seeds and juice the cucumber and make juice with it. So it's a fun fact that though this is a vegetable to us, it's more a fruit than a vegetable, and it's in the exact same family as one of the most vegetable-y vegetables that you can imagine, the squash. So I hope you all enjoyed this, and I really do hope that you learned something new. Part of my mission is to not only get you to grow more food and to learn about where food comes from, but to expand your general knowledge about gardening and the world of gardening around you. So if you learned something new, make sure to throw a like up there, comment down below with something that you learned, and also let me know if you'd like to see a part 2. I have so many fun facts that I've learned over the years that they're not really worth making a whole video over, but if I combine them together like this, there's definitely another video worth, or many more videos worth, of just kind of fun facts. So let me know if you enjoyed this, and we'll see you all in the next episode. All right, grow big or go home, everyone.